Knockoff is the most broken move in Pokemon history. That is, ever since Generation 6, when Knockoff was buffed more than any move has ever been buffed. Before Gen 6, Knockoff was a simple utility attack that removed an item. It only had 20 power. Even this was one of the strongest utility moves in the entire game, with incredible upside, making permanent progress against an enemy. And it was commonly used, but in Gen 6 they decided to buff this already very powerful utility attack to actually do good damage on top of this extremely useful effect. Knockoff was buffed in Generation 6 from 20 power to 65 power. And in addition to this, Knockoff also deals 1.5x damage if it is in the process of knocking off an item, aka most of the time. This buff to Knockoff changed everything, and it made Dark type the most desirable offensive type in the whole game, because not only can you do massive damage with this, you can also get a guaranteed value from removing an item. Let's explore the history of Pokemon's most powerful attack, from its humble beginnings, its rise to the forefront of metagame dominance in Gen 6, and how, from Gen 8 onwards, the move got even more powerful thanks to the world shifting around it. The move Knockoff was introduced in the Gen 3 games. And even though this version of the move is significantly less powerful than it would become later, it seems that even back then they were very careful about giving this to too many Pokemon. This 20 power Dark type attack, which was special at the time because of pre-physical special split, may seem pretty reasonable. It just removes an item, but this is one of the strongest and most desirable moves in this entire game too. And back in Gen 3, there aren't really that many guaranteed progress making moves with little downside. Knockoff is maybe the only move in the game that is completely safe to use, that is almost unpunishable. And removing leftovers from Pokemon is enormous in a metagame with permanent Sandstorm. A lot of people can only withstand Sandstorm thanks to leftovers cancelling the damage out. Honestly, I think that if Knockoff was more widely distributed in Gen 3 OU, the metagame would be much worse for it. And as you can see, there are no OU ranked Pokemon with Knockoff. Knockoff is very scarce. Very few things have it, and the most noteworthy Pokemon that has Knockoff is Hariyama. Hariyama is kind of a strange Pokemon. It's a mono fighting type with massive HP, very small defenses, good attack, and low speed. It is a bulky Pokemon, a bulky attacker. It has the ability Guts, meaning that burn will not affect it, and statusing this could result in your demise, as it gains an attack boost if statused. And the main draw to using Hariyama at all is its access to Knockoff. In my opinion, Hariyama feels like a reasonable Knockoff user because the guy is not very good at sticking around for a long time. This Pokemon does not have a recovery move like Soft Boiled. Hariyama is vulnerable to sand and spikes, and it's slow. And in most games where Hariyama is present, the fella can only hope to knock off one item usually. That's the most you're going to get out of it. So even as a utility option, Knockoff is feeling kind of reasonable here just because they're not giving it to that many Pokemon. And one of the few guys they have given it to is not able to spam it so often that it's annoyingly removing every item and there's so little you can do about it. Another relevant Pokemon that has access to Knockoff is Armaldo, who is occasionally seen as a bit of an anti-meta defensive guy. Armaldo's another strange Pokemon. Has a bug rock typing, an okay stat distribution, high attack, low speed, and decent defenses and HP. What Armaldo's really good at is hard countering Snorlax, because it has the ability Battle Armor, meaning it cannot be crit, and it has access to the move Harden, which is usually not seen in competitive, but Harden is able to raise your defense, matching Snorlax's curse boosts and cancelling out their attack, and because they can't hope to crit you and ignore your defensive boosts, you will basically wall them indefinitely. You can also knock off their leftovers and hit them with Seismic Toss to bring them down. So Armaldo is one of the most powerful punishers to Snorlax in the entire game. This guy is also pretty good against Celebi because of its super effective Hidden Power Bug, which deals ×4 damage to Celebi. But this guy is also, pretty niche. It's got a poor typing most of the time. It's weak to common attacking types like Rock, Steel, and Water. It also has no healing. It's not sticking around for that long. usually unless it's in very specific matchups, so you can see that even the nerfed, weak version of Knockoff is not being given to Pokemon that can abuse it very much. I don't know if the developers were aware of how good this would be on something more reliable defensively like a Blissey, but I'm glad that this is the case because I think the metagame is better for it. And the final guy I'll talk about here with Knockoff is Sableye, who the player ABR has innovated as a niche option on some stall teams. Sableye is interesting as a dark ghost type Pokemon because it happens to be immune to both Psychic and Rapid Spin. This makes it an interesting punish against Claydol, because Claydol is a Rapid Spinner that uses its Stab Psychic to 1v1 the most common ghost type in the game, Gengar. Sableye, on the other hand, is immune to Psychic and can not only block Rapid Spin from taking place, but kind of punish Claydol with Knockoff. This guy does have Recovery, and it is sort of able to stick around, but the thing about Sableye is that its defensive stats are absolutely atrocious. This guy's got 50 base HP, 75 base defense. Even though it has some niche value, it's kind of good against Claydol. It is being worn down by Spikes. Claydol can just hit it with Earthquake for pretty big damage because its stats are not that good. And yeah, it doesn't even have Prankster in this generation. It only has Keen Eye, which is basically nothing. I really want to draw attention to the fact that just the item removal effect of this move is extremely powerful, and it is able to make an otherwise garbage Pokemon like Sableye kind of worth considering on teams just because it has this. Now, in my opinion, Gen 4 is where Knockoff first started to become kind of broken. You might think that Gen 6 is where Knockoff started to become broken, but no. In Gen 4, they decided to distribute Knockoff to more Pokemon. And one of the Pokemon that received Knockoff was Clefable right here. Now, when talking about those Gen 3 Pokemon I just spoke about, I mentioned that many of them lacked defensive prowess or recovery options or much longevity. All of them were pressured by effects like Sand and Spikes, allowing them to be worn down easily so that they can't just consistently keep clicking Knockoff. But Clefable right here kind of doesn't have any of those problems. I mean, Clefable kind of suffers from a fairly average stat distribution, but its stats are good enough with 95 base HP and 90 special defense to operate as a solid special wall. Clefable has the incredible ability Magic Guard, which grants a complete immunity to all indirect damage. Perhaps the strongest ability in the entire game and a massive buff for this Pokemon. And because of this, it doesn't suffer from Sandstorm chip damage, or Stealth Rock, or Spikes, or Poison, or Leech Seed, or just about anything. So Clefable hitting the field is pretty reliable. It's pretty safe. It can usually wall things well enough. It has Soft Boiled for a straightforward form of healing. So Clefable can operate as a good special wall. And it has Knockoff. So every time Clefable comes in defensively and effectively answers something, that incoming defensive switch from your enemy, whatever it may be, is going to lose their item, and Clefable is going to get guaranteed value, because you can't really switch in against this. There is, Sticky Hold, which is an ability that means you can't be separated from your item. But take a look at this. Who the hell gets Sticky Hold? Gastrodon? Muck? Now, I'm as fond of Muck as anybody, but we're scarcely seeing Muck in Gen 4, you believe me. Believe me. So, in essence, there's zero way to counter getting your item removed, and getting your item removed is devastating in a world with Stealth Rock and Permanent Sand and all these things. And it's so easy for Clefable to find knockoff opportunities. Clefable's going to find multiple knockoff opportunities throughout the course of a game. Back in Gen 3, you could count your lucky stars if you got 1 or 2 knockoffs. Honestly, getting 2 items removed in Gen 3 is kind of Christmas morning. But Clefable is going to knock off multiple items in a game. That's just how it works. In fact, the best thing to bring in on a Clefable is your own Clefable, because it suffers less from the knockoff and then you can knock off them. A lot of the time, 2 Clefables are just going to sit there forever against each other because neither of them wants to switch out and take an item removal. So putting knockoff on a defensively capable Pokemon is already having massive metagame impact, where this guy just has such a free thing it can do that the enemy often won't let you do because they don't want to suffer the consequences of it. Another good defensive Pokemon that can use knockoff to its advantage is Empoleon in Gen 4. This is not as common as the Clefable. Clefable is one of the top Pokemon in the format seen all the time. But this is also a good set that is great at spreading knockoff. Empoleon is crucially immune to sand, resistant to rock, and immune to poison, giving it a lot of defensive backbone, letting it be a bit more sturdy against those residual damage effects than many other Pokemon are. Even though Empoleon doesn't have Recover or Roost or Soft Boiled any immediate healing, it does have Leftovers Chip Heal in the sand, and has Protect, Talbot Heal. And with special defense investment, you're a pretty damn good tank. You could stomach like a Latias Draco Meteor, and then use that to get a free item removal in the books, a free knock-off. This is where knockoff first became broken, because it is just so safe. It is so guaranteed to get you somewhere, and it has such a high impact for such a minimal cost. This is the danger of distributing knockoff to more things. And we're starting to feel it in this metagame. If you've played this metagame, you feel when a Clefable's on the field, you let out a sigh and you say, damn it, he's gonna knock off, I'm gonna slowly die to 1,000 cuts here. This is not very good, this is not very epic. So what do you think they did in the very next game, Generation 5? Do you think they learned from the errors of their ways? Turns out giving knockoff to such a powerful defensive Pokemon has unfortunate ripple effects on the metagame. Maybe let's not do that. So in Gen 5, they went ahead and gave knockoff to one of the strongest defensive Pokemon in history, Ferrothorn. And this was a big mistake. Ferrothorn is an incredible Pokemon. Maybe the best Pokemon of all time, honestly. Ferrothorn has outstanding defensive stats. The ability Iron Barbs, which is basically a built-in Rocky Helmet, damaging contact with enemies. A Grass Steel typing, which is extremely good. It has every hazard you could ever want, Stealth Rock Spikes. It even hits pretty hard with Power Whip and Gyro Ball, so it's an incredible combination of defensively walling things and then getting something out of the defensive switches, hurting the things attacking it with Iron Barbs, and even checking things offensively. You can one-hit Starmie or beat down a Tentacruel or an Excadrill with your big Power Whip. And he's got knockoff for the freest click in history. Knockoff is usually the most popular utility option of Ferrothorn besides the hazards and the attack, because it just always does something. Another option is Thunder Wave, which is very good. It's worth considering on some sets, but Thunder Wave has some counterplay to it. You know, a Breloom with Poison Heal can come in, it's immune. Ground types are immune. Some Pokemon have Refresh to cure status. Leech Seed is considerable, can be good, but Grass types are immune to Leech Seed. Magic Garda Pokemon are immune to Leech Seed. Knockoff, unless the enemy's running Muck, in which case your win rate just skyrocketed, nothing can come in on this and be happy about it. Nothing. And Gliscor also has knockoff. In truth, Gliscor had this option last gen, but it wasn't as good as using it last gen, because it didn't have Poison Heal yet. But now with Poison Heal, the defensive value of Gliscor is enhanced beyond words, because Poison Heal is one of the strongest abilities in the game as well. Poison Heal causes the poison status effect to heal you instead of damaging you, and it heals you for more than Leftovers heals, 1/8 of your max HP. Being poison means that you can't be statused by anything else, effectively making you immune to status. And the passive healing from this is so powerful that you do stick around for an extremely long time with Gliscor. And such a good defensive Pokemon having knockoff. Do I need to explain why this is good yet again? Just like when Clefable had it, just like when Ferrothorn had it, this is incredible and so hard to punish and so difficult to deal with. And it's part of why Gliscor is such an incredible Pokemon. Gen 6 is of course where knockoff received its significant buff and became both a fantastic item removal, utility effect, and the best Dark Stab option in the game. And the fact that this is now a viable attacking move, not just a utility move, greatly increased the amount of Pokemon that can viably use it. And in particular, physical attacking Dark types with access to this move dramatically shot up in viability and usage. The most significant was Bisharp, a Pokemon that just last generation wasn't very good, but now is one of the strongest physical attackers in Gen 6 OU. It has Stab knockoff and Sucker Punch to make up for its below average speed, as well as a convenient Dark Steel typing, meaning it's one of the few Dark types neutral to the new Fairy type. Weavile is the other new superstar of knockoff abuse. Weavile is maybe the most straightforward knockoff abuser. It's fast, has high attack and it clicks the move, dealing significant damage and also removing items on defensive switch-ins if they dare to grace the field. What's so powerful about this is that even resistances don't love coming in on knockoff, because they will lose their valuable item. I think the many generations of knockoff being a viable utility move, as I showcased, just goes to drive the point home that buffing knockoff was so insane. This was already one of the safest clicks in the game. It's one of the most guaranteed ways to just progress your game plan a little bit, slightly increase your chance of winning. It was already commonly used on any Pokemon that had it that was half decent defensively. And now it's a good attack too. Now it's also a good attack. And many Pokemon get it. Landorus Therian gets it. It didn't really use it before, but now why wouldn't you use it? It's a 2-in-1 deal. It's dark coverage and item removal. Scizor gets it too. Scizor gets it. I will say though, in the defense of the Gen 6 developers perhaps, they did release a new mechanic that is an inherent form of counterplay to knockoff. That is Mega Evolution. Mega Evolution requires you to use a Mega Stone. And the Mega Stone is an item that cannot be removed in any context with Trick or Thief or Knockoff, crucially. So because every team has a Mega form in Gen 6 OU, or most teams should, this is kind of inherent counterplay to Knockoff that does help, and it does make the move feel a little bit balanced. It helps also that a lot of prominent Megas are resistant to Dark, like Mega Diancie and Mega Lopunny. Because Knockoff is not removing the item of these Megas, it also only has 65 power, which is pretty low. Usually you're relying on that damage boost to actually deal good damage with Knockoff, but you don't get that damage boost against Megas. It's almost as if the buff to Knockoff was designed to coincide with the new existence of Mega Evolutions and their immunity to being knocked off. I don't know how intentional that was, but it is kind of elegant that these two things happen at the same time. In fact, I would have the hot take that in some scenarios, Knockoff feels more broken in Gen 4 and 5, where you don't have an easy switch into it on your team. Because in Gen 6, at least you have one Pokemon immune to item removal on your team at all times. This does help, and this is significant. But of course, overall, Knockoff is much better here, being so significantly buffed as an offensive move. And using Knockoff as a utility option did not go away. For example, Tangrowth is a regenerator wall, yet another Pokemon with an incredible defensive ability that is great at using Knockoff just because item removal is powerful and this guy has the defensive capabilities with its stats and healing from regenerator to stick around for a while and spread this item removal to its heart's content. But Knockoff as a strict utility option is a little bit nerfed in Gen 6 because of the presence of Megas, which actually feels kind of refreshing. Finally, you can at least do something against Knockoff being clicked. And strangely, in Generation 7, Knockoff is perhaps at its most balanced feeling, because Generation 7 introduced the all-new Z moves to the game, which also require a special dedicated item, the Z Stone. And much like Mega Stones, Z Stones are not able to be removed from a Pokemon either. So in Gen 7, you're commonly going to have two Pokemon on your team immune to being knocked off. Your dedicated Mega and your dedicated Z move user. For this reason, Bisharp actually fell down to UU in Gen 7. Didn't help that the metagame was more hostile toward it generally, but Knockoff is not as free of a click here when there are two Pokemon on every team usually that not only block the item removal effect of Knockoff, but also the extra damage. Weavile also fell down to UUBL in Gen 7 because of this. So it seems like perhaps there was some intention behind buffing Knockoff at the same time as introducing Mega Stones and Z moves, which are inherent forms of counterplay to Knockoff that exist alongside the new buff. But when Generation 8 came around, something interesting happened. Because Generation 8 was a big reset for competitive Pokemon. This is where Dexit occurred, cutting a lot of content from the games. It's the first time a significant amount of content was completely removed from a new Pokemon game. Crucially, Megas and Z moves were both completely removed. No more Mega Stones or Z Stones in the metagame. But Knockoff was not in turn nerfed. Knockoff remains the same. So you can see how this indirectly buffed Knockoff to be perhaps at its most powerful ever. In Generation 8, Knockoff is not only incredibly free as a utility move, guaranteed to remove an item because Megas and Z moves don't exist anymore. Every team does not have this easy counterplay. But as an attacking option, it's also incredible because it is dealing massive damage, always activating the extra damage, and always removing an item on top of that. Weavile and Bishop instantly shot back up to OU viability with the shifting metagame around them being so favorable for knockoff spam. And defensive knockoff use skyrocketed as well. Clefable, Toxapex, and Tornadus Therian are just some examples of the incredibly powerful defensive Pokemon that abuse knockoff for pretty much guaranteed progress in this format. Another reason that knockoff became so powerful is that there was a new item, a new paradigm shifting item, that was incredibly valuable to knock off. The new heavy duty boots item, the best item competitive singles has ever seen since Leftovers. Heavy duty boots is an item that grants a complete immunity to hazards, and it's extremely important on hazard vulnerable Pokemon like Moltres or Zapdos, who take massive damage from Stealth Rock on the way in, and special walls like Blissey, who get pressured by spikes and toxic spikes on the way in. It is not only easier to get value out of knockoff, there are more impactful items to knock off here. And something I've neglected to mention thus far is that Sticky Hold sometimes doesn't even feel like a great counter to knockoff, because even though Sticky Hold Pokemon are immune to having their items removed, for some reason knockoff will still deal the extra damage against Sticky Hold Pokemon. It's not like when you click knockoff against a Mega and you only get the 65 power knockoff, you don't get the bonus damage. For some reason, every time you use knockoff against a Sticky Hold Pokemon, you always get the extra damage. It's as if the game thinks you're knocking off an item, Sticky Hold prevents it from happening, and therefore you still do bonus damage without actually removing the item. In Generation 9, there at least seems to be some awareness of how powerful knockoff is, because they did remove knockoff from the movesets of various Pokemon. Bishop no longer has knockoff, which is a big deal. This is half the reason Bishop was any good to begin with. And in turn, Bishop's new evolution, King Gambit, does not have knockoff. And we can thank the heavens for this, because King Gambit is already arguably the best Pokemon in the game. Imagine if it also had knockoff. That would be a huge problem. But it doesn't. They removed knockoff from this, which was a good decision. It was a good choice. Landorus Therian also lost knockoff, which helps that Pokemon from taking the jobs of everything else, because Landorus Therian seriously did everything in previous generations. Now some of its options are restricted. I think it also helps that Booster Energy is a new item in the game, and Booster Energy is a consumable item that is only usable on the Paradox Pokemon. As soon as these Pokemon switch in, the Booster Energy gets consumed and it will boost their highest stat temporarily. So because this item exists and it automatically consumes an item, it is kind of a good switch in against knockoff, because you've already used your item and you don't have an item anymore after consuming it, so knockoff doesn't do anything against the Booster Energy Pokemon, and it doesn't get the bonus damage. So in the same way that Megas were a form of counterplay to knockoff, now you also have these Booster Energy Paradox Pokemon, which are very commonly seen, that can be a little bit of a reprieve against the free value that knockoff represents. Now, knockoff is still a big part of the metagame. Great Tusk gets knockoff, and it's a common option. Weavile received knockoff again in DLC when it previously lost it, and that brought Weavile back to OU viability. The Pokemon Roaring Moon, a paradox form of Salamence, initially did not have knockoff, but it received knockoff as a new option in DLC, and this was such a buff that Roaring Moon got banned eventually as a result. In Gen 9, we are perhaps also seeing the most usage of Sticky Hold that I think I've personally ever seen in a metagame, because stall teams in particular really hate facing knockoff. They rely on, in particular, boots, heavy-duty boots, to mitigate hazards and reliably maintain their defensive backbone. So we have seen Sticky Hold Hydrapple as a stall option, which is kind of fun. We've also seen Sticky Hold Gastrodon and even Muck be used as a niche Sticky Hold Pokemon on stall teams, because it can switch in on knockoff, maintain its boots and its hazard immunity, and also knock off things itself in a strange twist of fate. So how do I feel about knockoff overall? Well, it's one of those things that has been in the game for so long that it's something we're all used to at this point, much like Stealth Rock was for years. But I think if you actually look at it, it's a bit bizarre that they buffed knockoff in the first place. It was already such a strong utility option, and I think that perhaps one attack shouldn't do so much at once. You know, compare it to an attack like Ceaseless Edge. This is the signature move of Hisui and Samurott, and this is a strong attack that sets spikes on the field at the same time. Hisui and Samurott is the only Pokemon in the game that gets this, and it is viable and competitive just because it gets this move. Imagine if Ceaseless Edge was more widely distributed to more things. Hisui and Samurott feels pretty balanced because its stats aren't the best, it is fairly one-dimensional. But what if King Gambit got Ceaseless Edge? What if Roaring Moon got it? It's very dangerous when one attack is so free and it deals good damage at the same time. I really wanted to hammer home just how good knockoff was pre-buff, because even back then when damage wasn't a part of the equation at all, it's a utility attack, meaning it's immune to taunt, you can't be taunted, and be stopped from knocking off something. And back in Gen 4, it's one of the reasons Clefable is so powerful is because it has knockoff, and it's so guaranteed to do something that it's just frustrating at times to play against. I'm glad that in Gen 9 there feels like more counterplay to knockoff exists, but we've even seen that giving knockoff to the wrong thing can have a serious negative impact, because Roaring Moon was an acceptable Pokemon before it received knockoff, and that pushed it to brokenness yet again. I think that in the past they were perhaps a bit careless with what options they gave to what Pokemon. The wider distribution of Scald was, in my opinion, a bit much in older generations, and I'm very glad that they have severely restricted the amount of Pokemon that learn Scald. I feel the same way about knockoff. I think restricting how many Pokemon get knockoff is a fantastic thing, and you should be very careful about who you give knockoff. I think in Gen 3, they were careful about who they gave knockoff even before it was buffed. And one of the reasons I am such a fan of Gen 3 OU was because there aren't that many moves in that game that are completely guaranteed to get value. Everything in that metagame has a bit of a cost, including knockoff, because the few things that get knockoff are very limited in how long they can stick around or achieve in a battle. I think restricting knockoff's distribution in Gen 9 was a step in the right direction. And the rise of certain sticky hold Pokemon as well is also a showcase that the metagame can adapt to knockoff in unique ways too. Hopefully in Gen 10, knockoff will not become a problem yet again. And not that knockoff absolutely ruined these metagames or anything. In fact, I think it feels fine in Gen 6 and 7. In Gen 8, you can also manage it by just being strategic about which Pokemon gets knocked off, but it does still feel a little bit oppressive at times, this move. It always feels like there is no good option for you when you are facing a knockoff user. But what do you think? Am I overreacting to the brokenness of knockoff? Is it fine? Should there be more counterplay to it? I think the counterplay is healthy and good, but what do you think, folks? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.